With this, we move to our next speaker, and we are joined by Honorable Abusaleh Shariff ji. He is joining us from Washington, D.C. He's a chief scholar and mentor at the US-India Policy Institute since 2012 and president of the Center for Research and Debates in Development Policy, New Delhi. He was an advisor to the Prime Minister of India, Honorable Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, on areas of interstate relations and inclusive development policy reforms. He was also nominated to the 13th Finance Committee by the Government of India and selected as an economist of the millennium by India Today magazine in 2000. Hailing from our very own Bengaluru, we are very proud of you, sir, and we invite you now to please give your speech at this Virtual Global Conference 2021.
Thank you, Madam Ji, and I am so honored to be on this platform of Jaihind People's Movement on a very auspicious day of the birth of Mahatma Gandhi and Shastri ji. This is a new group to me, and I would thank all the other key functionaries of Jaihind People's Movement. And I assure you, I'm very happy to continue my relationship with this movement. With this, I have a few issues listed out. They are somewhat academic, but I try to make this more listenable or understandable for general public. However, I begin with few quotes of Mahatma himself. It reminds us of essential and universal moral values. Truth and nonviolence, of course, but I'm going to read 5 of his statements. Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. Live as if you were die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Nearly everything you do is of no importance, but it is important that you do it. In a gentle way, you can shake the world. These are all Mahatma Gandhi's own statements. A wrong, Mahatma Gandhi argued with Pandit Nehru, should not only be condemned, but to be resisted. Now, we need a whole lifetime to understand the meaning of each of these 5 statements. And I leave that time to you and these statements, please ponder. But he was a lover of the poor and marginalized. That's what I want to underscore. He was a top-notch Hindu, adhered and loved all over the world. So was Lal Bahadur Shastri ji, whose birth anniversary falls today. All children of India are indebted to Shastri ji for his importance of white revolution, promoting availability of milk to masses. With this, I move over to the topic of the day, the idea of India for 75 years, challenges, opportunities, etc. Well, in 75 years is a very long time. We have passed that 75 years after independence. And that may be one of the reasons why the benchmark 75 for future is on the title. It is very difficult to hazard a guess as to what would happen if I were to take birth today and then 75 years later. But let me highlight a few foundations that have been laid. My previous speakers very eloquently and analytically brought out many of these. There could be a bit of repetition, but they are important because they are repeated, they are important. They are repeated by different people. That means those issues are very important. Indian ethos, as I know, can be described as universal value system. I lived all my life in India. I had done all my education, some more education abroad, And all my work life, I never worked in any country other than India, in spite of getting education abroad. So it is important that all inclusive, just not people, Indian ethos. It is inclusive means it is just not people. It is animals, plants, forest, environment. And this is a very, very important issue which confronts our future, not only of India, of the world. It believes that the current generation must leave back a better India for our future, for our posterity. We have to leave our country in a better shape than what we received from our parents. So that means we should save and improve, not expend or spend away, utilize away. That is not the responsibility of the generation, because we have to protect and save and transfer it to the next generation. And it is called intergenerational resource transfer. In fact, if you Google my name, I have a couple of articles on this concept. Now, future is built upon the foundations of today. This is important. That has empirical records and documented procedures and practices. We have achieved something and we have documented those processes and procedures. Let us not anchor our future on the ancient past, which is not factually understood or scientifically tested. Sometimes we Indians tend to do that mistake. India is marching ahead. That is my conclusion. But it is puzzling. There are puzzling factors. India is marching ahead, but it is puzzling. Unique structure. India has a unique economic structure and social structure. And it has a socially complex baggage that we have to carry along with us. Now, when I use the word baggage, there are a lot of social issues which can impede the growth of Indian economy. India is in a phase of economic development which can only be described puzzling and difficult to seek analytical explanations. Just the sheer size and direction of the economy has won a sterling rating, so to speak, mostly because other major economies, namely China, Japan, Europe, US, etc., have faltered. The puzzle is, in India, major targeted objectives have not met the expected level of achievements yet. Still, given the size of the economy, it is knocking the door of the top economies of the world, where a huge number, millions of people are still poor. India is facing three evils. I call these three evils of Indian democracy and economy. Number one, which is happening much more fast and swiftly last 10 years, is centralization of governance. This is one of the biggest curse which we are facing today. The second one is what technically, academically called elite capture, elite. That is, in India, I transfer that word to majoritarianism or dominant caste control over the governance and the economy. And the third evil is social and economic discrimination. Mind you, equal opportunity is a basic constitutional right, but not all Indians have an equal opportunity in India. Now I shift a bit towards the domestic policies and future prospects. It has been already told, India is the most populous country and youthful country in the world today. This for some was a curse. A few years ago, population was a curse in India, but no more. It is a blessing. You know, I see our children although we are a populous country, we need to reduce the rate of population growth. But the people we already have, the youth we already have, the children we already have is our blessing. The concept is demographic dividends. These are the youth and children who can reap the advantages of numbers, advantages of being youthful, and advantages of being children. Unfortunately, I just give you one reference during this lecture. The UN has produced an under 5 child report. Every Indian must read this. Now, the situation and condition of the under 5 children in India are the worst. Somebody earlier told that we almost have half of our youthful and child population living in India, and their conditions are not good. They face multiple deprivations. We also have a kind of labor supply problem. We have most populous country. We have a lot of people, but we still face a labor supply problem because we may not have adequately skilled and adequately educated, technically sound, efficient labor. So we have labor which is not useful in the current structure of production system. So technology and scientific temper are the two words which anchor labor quality for the future. Now, that is where I think the previous speaker brought very eloquently the importance of training and entrepreneurship. It is about 2 decades that India is experiencing a fast fertility decline. Notwithstanding still high population numbers, and the value of the youth has increased somewhat, especially those who are educated and become part of the international IT. However, I cryptically call the demand for our IT trained youth abroad as a kind of modern sweatshops in those countries. So we need to still diversify the quality of our labor. It is just not that you troubleshoot the IT issues, but we need to be there in higher level employment in all sectors of the world. Now, this issue was brought out earlier speaker. India will be what Indian institutions do today. India's future must steadfastly be anchored on institutions it has created or it is going to create and it nurtures. Democracy, equal opportunity, equity and equitable distribution, gender empowerment, and regionally balanced development. Now, all these we are at the moment at crossroads. We don't have a mature democracy. Our equal opportunity has serious issues. We do not see equitable distribution. Our gender indicators are still far too, dispersed. There are huge gender gaps. And regionally, we are not a balanced economy. The northern states and some of the southern and western states have different growth trajectories. So there is not one India, mind you. You cannot make one policy. You cannot centralize policy. Centralization of policy making is like shooting with double barrel gun and you're going to kill everything. You have to decentralize. Mediocrity of institutions. We face it today a lot. And political control over scientific and technological institutions will be a disaster. So leave away the experts, science and technology away from politics. And then you see how India will grow. Now, I say a few words on the economic scene. Over a period of time, when the economy grows, the labor which is trapped in low productivity sectors have to move out of that low productivity sector towards the high productivity sectors. There has to be a movement. There has to be a shift away from low productive sectors of the economy to the higher productive. This is happening in India, but at a very slow rate. Go back to China 40, 50 years ago. China could do that shifting of the low productive sector of the labor to the higher productive sector of the labor in about 3 decades. And it has done to such an efficiency. I'm not talking of China as a communist or democratic country. That's a different issue. But see what China has achieved in 30, 40 years, which no country on the earth has achieved. It has removed poverty. Now poverty in China is almost closer to zero. There are many ways to define poverty. We can argue that until the cows come back home. But the issue is China could do it in 3 to 4 decades, but India is unable to do it. India is still in the track. So the productivity and value added, the sectors which are higher productivity and higher value added for the same amount of time and energy. And also that for future, we need to anchor. See, most of our Indian growth, which the whole world is surprised, amazed, is happening because of our domestic demand, because we are a huge population. No, in future, if we want to grow, we need to anchor our development on trade and exports. But unfortunately, India is one of the worst countries when it comes to international trade barriers. India has far too many international trade barriers, sometimes tit for tat barriers. Sometimes they are very myopic. There is no long-term vision. How do you attract international investments? I think our American friends were telling that US is not investing in India. Take my word for it. US is not going to invest in India as much as we expect. US has invested in China. Although there are some aberrations now, last 2-3 years, that US investment in China is going to fall. No, it's going to increase again, because China is still needed for the world supply chains. China is still anchoring it. China's market has not gone away to Vietnam. India couldn't reap the benefits of last 2 years of opportunities. India has done zero. Vietnam, even Bangladesh has benefited from there, but India could not. So the long-term, environmentally sound, sustainable exploitation of natural resources is a must for India. Has anybody traveled to the rivers in Gujarat? I used to live in Gujarat. I used to see Gujarat rivers flowing in blood. There are many types of blood Gujarat had shed, but this blood is environment, water pollution, the industrial pollution, which is put in, our rivers. We worship our rivers. We say Mother Ganga. Every river is Mother Ganga to me. And we pollute it. And we have polluted every river in India. How can we do it? Land degradation, forest deforestation, even air. And now the biggest threat for India is going to be the increase in daily temperatures, average temperatures. 2 to 3% increase will bring huge desertification in large parts of India. India is an evergreen country at the moment. But how do you protect these resources? And our future depends on those policies. Economic freedom and promotion of private sector is essential. Private sector is essential, but not to enable creation of monopolies, huge monopolies. No, we don't want. So how do you bring a balance in the private sector promotion? We have not yet learned a lesson. And also there is an issue of diversity in workforce. A diverse workplace is an important asset, but our workplaces are not diverse. Since the diverse workplaces acknowledges the individual strength of each employee and the potential they bring. Valuing the differences of others is what ultimately brings us all together and can be the secret of success. Thriving workplaces and a fair work culture. So we need to improve diversity in work. There are issues more recent. I have just listed them. There is no time to discuss. There is a case of migrant labor in India, which is massive, millions and millions. We have seen that. We have observed. I was in Delhi in the first lockdown. My house was in the corner of Anand Vihar. My house was engulfed by millions of people, and I have seen people suffering there myself firsthand. The farming class, it is just not the farmers' agitation which I am talking about. The farmers have been suffering for a very long time. And mind you, half of our labor force is manual labor. And about 90% of our labor force is unorganized. It is not organized at all. 90%. How much of labor force is organized in USA? Practically every employee is connected to an organizational structure. India, 90% are not. The other issue of social identities, the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and now the Muslims who are deprived substantially for the last about 20 years, they all together form about 50% of the labor force. You need special attention to that youth and that children to reap the benefits of future. You can't grow by leaving away 50% of our population or labor force. You can't grow. You cannot say, okay, we will grow with all technology, labor replacing technology. There will be a social revolution in India. There will be a disaster in India if that happens. So we have to bring inclusion in employment and labor force. I am going to conclude now with comments on governance. Centralization of governance, which is reflected in current dispensation, is not progressive but regressive. Democracy cannot mature when dissent and political opposition is controlled through undemocratic means. Political empowerment of masses and the marginalized is a precondition to glorious future of India. Possible only if they are integrated into the grassroots level institution and politically empowered. Grassroots level institution, the key. But find what we find today are institutional establishment aiming to disenfranchise millions of marginalized citizens. The system want to keep them away, throw them away from political decision making. India has a global responsibility. I don't have time to explain, but India at the moment is unable to exploit its global responsibility role. That is because India has moved away from its non-aligned tag, the tag of Nehruji's tag of non-aligned movement. India is running behind a few countries to align itself and bring a military or trade, bloc. That was not India. India was respected by every country in the world soon after independence for 4 to 5 decades. So India must regain its non-aligned tag. And I conclude by saying, India is on the path of losing its pious and pristine image internationally. This will lead to the power of zero soon as an international player if we don't change our international policy. Well, this is a self-critique of my own nation. I live in USA, I work in USA, but I'm an Indian by heart and an Indian by thought. And I hope I have raised a few issues. Some of them could be critical, and I intend to be. And then I would appreciate if people have any questions, you can come back, get the email from the organizers. And I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Sir, indeed, it was a very heart-to-heart talk and a very honest talk. And that's what we expected from you. Thank you so much once again for joining with us. And I'm sure we will share your details with our viewers so that if anybody could want to connect to you, they will get back to you. Thank you once again and all the best for all your future endeavors.